Good morning, dear friends. So we are here to conclude our discussion or talk for the last 3 days. In this world, whatever, anything which has a beginning, it is bound to have an end. So we have started this iteration 4 days before, and today this is last day. All these are very clear and gross indication of the impermanence nature. Each one of the surrounding environment and natural things reminded us all the time the transitoriness, but we refuse to recognize them or take note of them. That is one of the symptoms or evidence of our insensitiveness. The four mindfulness we have talking about. Of course, if I talk about it according to the canon, according to the Buddhist discipline, in which it is a part of 37 categories of the Bodhisattva path or Sharavakyan path, is common path. But if I speak in a just layman's language or common sense way of looking at it, this is how to improve our sensitivity, the insensitive mind, to convert into a sensitive mind. The nature of mind is very sensitive, but due to enormous conditioning of all the time, our mind become insensitive. Just for example, we look at the history of Gautama Buddha. The Siddhartha just witnessed once an old person, a dead body, a diseased one, and he immediately had the question, the fundamental question: the decay, the disease and the death comes to selectively someone, or it is pervasive to all living creature. Then he asks his charitable, this misery comes to selectively somebody, or it is pervasive to everyone? And he says, Your Highness, all the humanity, all living beings shall have to go through this. It is very pervasive. Immediately he realized there's no essence of all the worldly affluence and pleasure, and he set off to search the truth or the remedy to get out of all this. For we, for example, when I was in Banaras, Every day we come close. Several dead bodies come into the cremation ground, and we also see the old age people, but it doesn't make anything. So their mind is so thick and insensitive. Anything we witness is just a part of information, and the sensitivity is reduced to just around the selfishness or the ego. If something is very much related to yourself, then you have some kind of sensitivity. Otherwise, it is just information. Each day we hear news in the radio or in the television or read in the newspaper. Hundreds of people are killed in Syria or somewhere. So this is just an information. It doesn't make anything to shake our mind. When that news is 100 people are killed in Delhi, then we little bit react to it. Then this is in Kangra or in Dharamshala, then you immediately think about a air crash, aeroplane is crashed and 70 or 80 people died. It doesn't make any difference to your mind. But someone dear and near of your own is traveling on that, then you immediately jump and get worried and very sensitively react. So that means our sensitivity is come back to the just self-centered one, and it cannot reach to all living creatures. So therefore, to restore the original sensitiveness of our mind, practice mindfulness to the body, to the feeling, to the mind, and to the rest of the phenomenon, is basically to regain the original nature of sensitive to everything, not divided and not divisive, but pervasive to everything. So that's some translators have translated close contemplation. There is also have a good sense. We contemplate our body, our feeling, our mind occasionally, but we do not contemplate very closely. So close contemplation make a sense because you look your mind, body and feelings intimately, deeply and closely, then you will find the basic nature of the mind. In this universe or in this existence, all sentient beings have three things in common. Disrespect of different races, different languages, different body, different shape, different size. There are three things are completely common. The communality, the similarity for all sentient beings is that all sentient beings are desirous of happiness and pleasure, undesirous of misery and suffering. No one is looking for suffering and misery, pain. Everybody is looking for free from misery, pain, or comfort or pleasure. So this is common from the smallest insect or germs to the elephant or the biggest dinosaur or something. All the living creatures has this natural tendency, not liking pain and liking pleasure. The third similarity is each one has the right, the natural right, not a right which is conferred you by law or by constitution. It may call as a birthright. Everyone has the right to seek happiness and avoid unhappiness. And at the same time, each one has the potential. All sentient beings has the potential of dispelling, avoiding unhappiness and seeking or acquiring happiness. So this potential, from the Buddhist viewpoint, each sentient being has the potential to become a Buddha. So that means to reach the highest level and to do away all misery with its cause and achieve all the bliss or the peace. So this commonality is one of the facts on which we have to, or we can develop a compassionate mind, a mind which does not differentiate the self and the other. So therefore such kind of mind need a extreme sensitiveness of the mind. So for that, these four practices are very effective, and therefore in the graduation path it is put in the first level. Our group, for discussing this matter, as I mentioned before, mixed one. Many people are beginners and many people are having good knowledge of Buddhism. But since I am not acquainted with you personally, so I do not have the understanding of your level, and apart from that, if I talk exactly in a canonical language, that may become very technical and many people may not be understand. When I go out of canonical language, canonical terms, and there is some ambiguous, not very clear, because the common language when used for spiritual practices, sometimes there is difficult. And apart from that, my English language is so poor, so with my broken English I was not able to communicate very clearly to you, but you have very patiently give attention for the last 3 days. So, as a conclusion, in a very level of common sense or common language, we must achieve a sensitive mind. Our insensitive mind should be tried to convert into sensitive, and sensitive not only for the self, sensitive to all living and non-living phenomenon, taking everything as a equal level, and that is we may call a religious mind, and that is we may call a positive mind. So with this few words, now I invite your questions. Whosoever has any question, I will try to discuss. Thank you.
This question just came into my mind as you were speaking now, but if someone were to be equally sensitive to all beings, then might that be a little bit overwhelming to the person, like to perceive so much suffering as if it were their own suffering?
Then what is question? If someone has that kind of sensitiveness and overwhelming?
Yeah, I guess in Western psychology there's this, I don't know Western psychology well, but there's an idea that like people shut down naturally at the sight of suffering sometimes, because if they didn't kind of have that defense mechanism, that it might be psychologically very difficult for them to function. So I'm wondering from a Buddhist perspective then, how would you transform that if someone were to develop such a sensitivity?
Okay.
I'm sorry if my question's not very clear.
The entirety of Buddha's teaching can be summed up in the concept of, or in the principle of, Four Noble Truths. The truth of suffering, the truth of cause of suffering, the cessation, and the path. This sequence is not a particularly a system of spiritual path. Naturally, even a non-believer, someone is willing to get rid of suffering, then this sequence is important. They need to recognize the cause of suffering, then the cause shall have to be removed, and to remove the cause, what the antidote to remove that cause should also understand, and by understanding the antidote of the cause, then do take it and do away with the cause, and the suffering will automatically goes away. So therefore, when Buddha taught to the disciples for the Four Noble Truths, he qualified differently. And when he says, when he talk about the truth of suffering, he says, you must know the suffering. You must feel the suffering. Many people do not feel the suffering. All worldly happiness or pleasure, which are in reality a suffering of changing. In Sanskrit language called is parinam dukh, a happiness, apparent happiness, which when it comes to a end or cessation, then it creates the pain. And apart from that, many suffering we do not realize because of our insensitiveness. The first requirement is to see the suffering as suffering. That's first requirement. Then search for the cause, and cause is to be removed. And to remove the cause, you need to understand the path, the remedy, and the remedy is to be practiced, and then cessation is to be achieved. So the first thing is realization. You must realize, you must understand the suffering as suffering. In the course of developing the realization of suffering, it begins from the self. When we talk about three levels of people, Adam Purush, Madhyam Purush, Mahapurush in the path. So the miseries also, the pains also, the first think of apparent pain, and then secondly the pervasive miseries, so of oneself. When you see the one's own ongoing misery, in the beginning it might be very depressing, very overwhelming. Seeing one's own suffering can lead someone into depression. But at the same time, what the Buddha taught us is, you must realize the nature of suffering, and at the same time you should see the cause. And at the same time you must understand whether the cause is removable or not removable. It has any remedy or it doesn't have any remedy. When it has a remedy, you have the confidence, yes, I do have this suffering, but I can overcome it. Because I know the cause, and I also realize the cause can be eradicated, completely do away. For that, I know the antidote of the cause, the path, so I will practice the path and I will remove the suffering. So by this way, the Bodhisattvas or even the Charvaks who have seen the entirety of the enormous amount of pain, yet their mind is not depressive or overwhelming by the realization of the suffering. And similarly, you have a sensitive to feel everyone's suffering as of your own. It would be a tremendous feeling of uncomfortable, but at the same time the person has the self-confidence and determination to remove it. And for the purpose of removing the only just staying with burden of the realization of suffering is not the way. And with the understanding of the cause and its removability and its remedy, with this combined understanding of the whole sequence, then it has a strength, and that realization of suffering will not affect the sensitiveness of your mind, will not affect for your courage and enduring to do the methods how to remove it. So all this mindset comes together. So therefore the sensitive does not mean, even for example oneself, a patient who is completely overwhelmed by the intense pain the person is having and not able to face it, that patient is more difficult to cure, and they are not cooperating with the doctor or with the medicines. Having a sensitive to the pain, even its smallest, but you have a sensitive to the pain, and at the same time you have the similar understanding of its cause, the removability of the cause, and the method by which the cause to be removed, then you have a systematic plan, a program, and in which your courage and your determination, instead of becoming low, it will increase. So seeing the entire sentient beings suffering by the Bodhisattvas, that gives strength to the Bodhisattvas. Such a tremendous pain is there, I must do something here and now, immediately. The Bodhisattvas who are choosing for the Vajrayana, they are not choosing Vajrayana due to their unwilling to spend enormous time in practice, but they are more hurry for the removal of the misery of sentient beings, and for that purpose they choose the short path, the Vajrayana. So therefore, in ordinary sense, of course, one can be completely disheartened and discouraged by one's own realization of misery, and then realization of all sentient misery can be overwhelming and can be unbearable. That is true, but the sensitive mind means sensitive to everything. So therefore, when you have a sensitivity to the misery, and you also have a sensitivity to the cause, the remedy and the cessation, and all comes together, then it is balanced. So by that way, the realization of everyone's misery should considered as overwhelming cause of depression or rejection of one's mind. So the sensitiveness itself has a inbuilt quality of seeing everything.
I've got a question regarding consciousness. Does everything have a consciousness? Regarding consciousness, does everything have a consciousness? When we talk about the body and the small particles, does a small particle have an individual conscious? Or how does it relate?
Everything, when we use the word everything, includes the non-sentient beings and sentient beings, both. The non-sentient beings does not have a consciousness because it is non-sentient being. The sentient beings means all sentient beings has consciousness. Non-sentient being such as trees and storms or all these non-sentient beings, they do not have consciousness. In the past, there are debate, life and consciousness are the same or there is a difference. I am not talking in the present time. Of course, the science people and religious people do have different perceptions regarding the consciousness. In the ancient Indian philosophical traditions also, there are traditions who say whichever has a life, that should have a consciousness. The trees and the flowers, they also have a life. They came into being, grown, and then decay, and then dry away. So that means there is a cycle of life, and if you do some harm, there are many plants, many leaves, if you touch, it just shrinks. So there are trees or the flowers, when sun shines it is gloomy some, and then sun goes, it comes back. So these are put as these things also has a mind, a consciousness. But Buddhist tradition do not accept. There are lives, and life means some movement and some kind of systematic changing process, but they do not have any consciousness. Consciousness has no beginning, consciousness has no end. Beginninglessly, individual consciousness are there, and then it goes from past life to the present life and to the future life, and ultimately goes to the Buddha nature. And even it goes to the Buddha nature, it does not come to the end. The continuum of the consciousness always with there. Consciousness has no beginning, no end. So this is the Buddhist concept. So in the Buddhism, whosoever have ability to understand and think, that kind of thing is a sentient being. Anything which does not have the capacity to think or understand, that does not have consciousness. This is in general. Now, when we talk about the body, we do not say body consciousness or part of body's consciousness, but the consciousness of individual is residing in the entirety of the body and the entirety of the cells and particles of the body. So here the canonical terminology is it includes. At this moment, we are residing in the body, and in the fingertip there is some pain or pleasure. It is felt by the consciousness. It is acknowledged by the consciousness. Because the consciousness is pervasive to all these parts, to all the particular things. But these particular parts which are inclusive into consciousness is one individual consciousness, the self, a so-called I. And this consciousness, as long as owns to the body, it is pervasive. Then body can be damaged. If one of your hand is imputed, then consciousness territory is only up to part of the body. What is imputed and what is put to away, then that cannot feel to the consciousness of the self. So it is residing, or it has the ownership to each of the smallest particles and cells, but it does not say the particle has an individual consciousness. It is in the territory of the consciousness of the person. Consciousness is one, but it reaches everywhere. It's clear? Okay.
Pequena lá na digrela. Peque.
Na rendida.
Di Rinpoche le dampo waina. Ngatsu di tempanya shashi gom kya be kapsu. Ngatsu di tunchigla. Ngatsu pirna di ludan tsurwadan semda chu. Ngatsu kare Rinpoche ne gom kya gore. Yana tunchigla pirna di tunchigla ludan tunshimpa di pirna tsurwadan tindere di karesa gomgi rimpa yana di perna nga chu di rerela gom gyabe kapsu perna di luda gom gyabe kapso nga chu de chigom dan jogom gi zundel o di parula perna ludan sorwa dan semdan chugi di parula kipar yoda me yanan namsha chikpa chikyare o di chikre ani perna ludi karesa tenpanisha de lu gom gyabe kapso perna de ludi dampu de karesa lugi karesa ludi rob samdan yelag da o di chigomre ani ludi khona chechik to nepa jogomre ani de chigom dan jogom zundel de karina o di chikre ani de perna de jitobge kapso yang kare de samlo tangore samlo kare jimgore de tungi kapso dan jitobge kapso tiwadir
tiwashta yahudu le tambu wala tanganzu shungna shinchen shebina le tambu wala temba nisha senyi bati yomare temba nisha jitun bachi mato yomare temba nisha yina lamshu giju ki chimba ingure temba nisha ki sansam di tsolam chungune sanje sayi padu shawarwa di inza tsolam mantobe kansa chila janju jisin jula majibe kansa chigi lu temba nisha gomba inaya tsuwa temba nisha gomba inaya di temba nisha jitun basila gure mato temba nisha tsenyi basila gumare temba nisha ki tsenyi shawe kabla lu sur sinju shibu kanun la mingne chi tsen tang ranzen nyor chube ranzen da chi tsen nyor chube namji ki shiraw ngor chube lamshu ki chimbas dusha gore dusre ta lamshu inenda lamashu inenda temba nisha gumbe kabla thoma gumbe korenti lu tsorwa sim tindro goyadre lu tsor sim sumbuti ane digsona tene tile shembe chuti cheti ane chutemba nisha konsu tena manchiwa diminto jiki chuti sundurwa adu sindure jasan thoma gumbe kabla lu ta tsorwa ta sim ta chu shibuti kurindu sinandroyati ngenjen re ta temba nyesha gongla nyuan tumbe kabla ane ring chiba mage biche chu ngela gom lu jele shane digre ti yama kandes tubene digre jasan tila nyuan tumbe kansa jula kuringe ba me le tambo age thoma gombe kabla kuringe ba yus kuringe ba yug be junsen karresena lu temba nyesha le nyuan tumbe ti ene tso temba nyesha le nyuan tunyagi tunjin chigi yore tso temba nyesha le nyuan tumbe ti ene sim temba nyesha le nyuan tunyagi tunjin chigi yore dinde yinsan dosim ta nyuan tumbe kansa la kanche jire chegung tan jogong songdil siyati tsamla le nyamdo nyamdo rogore shenen tan latum top simbe kansa chi na eni songdi mandu na indigre zamri shenen gi tone gum zamri latum tone gum ta temba nyesha dil latum ngore madu shenen ke yomar temba nyesha gin julia shenen gumba ina ta shenen tan latum seni ba matobi kansa tigi thoma chegunche tene ti thalan jogon re ngebar tun dogoya de karresina chegun maya wanki shene tobali ya ge meje ya gtundala ti cheware jesan lu tamba ni jata bojele cha sumbe ina thoma lu gi cha she tu rimbe shin tu tabe chegun chebe chela chegun ti chegung gullo tel ya luji number chagirba luji number condition tila Any sin shane, sin tijiven jugung, temporary injimichore. The Jetop Siata Tunsam Sianiuti, Lokare, Jetop Shivati, Nyamshagi, Simtone Chimbaina, Nyamsha Lambe Jelia Jetop Sigre. Turned on Tunsam Sidukala, Tung Lia Gonjane Deve Kapta, and Gone Trine Tunzan Mayume Cup, each other. But Nyamsha Ki Shila Seniba Tumne, Nyamsha Yunga Chimbaina, Jetoblayan, Nyamsha Kapso, Kanyang Sulembe, Movuti, Chardo, Tempenal Mayer Chene. Pina Lu Tembanisha, Lanyamber Shabe, Kansachi, Nyamsha Lame Jelia, Pichachilova in Lu Tembanisha, and Joy Pichaloyata. Samdunala Lugi Suat, Lu Tembanisha Suati, Mayer Chene, Kantu Chendiata, Kala Seve Kapta. Tujave Kapta, Chamjan Due Kablaya, Lu Tembanisha Kolia, Yanayant, the Jaguati, Tunzam Ginecolinere, Chito Ginecolinere, to see the Kachimure. The question was, for the beginner, we must practice the body, feeling, mind, and phenomenon in this sequence, or the sequence can be according to one's convenience. So what I was telling was, for the beginners, the sequence is necessary, because the mindfulness of body will help to achieve the mindfulness of the feeling, and the feeling will help for this mind, and the mind will help for the other phenomena. So in the beginners, this sequence should go. But when you have a more realization or more habitual, or your mind is already in the well-trained way, then this sequence can be reversed, or you may do one thing and the others may be leave. So there's no necessity of the sequence. Then the second question was, the analytical meditation and concentrated meditation should go always together. So my reply was, if someone is already achieved the standard of shamatha and vipassana, then there's no need of the both. But who have not achieved shamatha and vipassana in its original form, you are just a beginner, then the analytical meditation must be followed by a little bit of concentrated meditation in order to later on to achieve the vipassana and shamatha both. I think that's all.
Hello. In body mindfulness, how do we see the body without the help of feeling?
This is a very technical question. I think just in the beginning I have mentioned that to be mindfulness to the body, not taking the feeling into account, it is very difficult. So therefore many of the vipassana traditions, they do not separate these two. They go together. The awareness of body is achieved through the awareness of the feeling, and they reach to the body through the feeling. And that's also a good method. But this particular awareness or sensitiveness or mindfulness of body, without taking into consideration or taking into the part of meditation the feeling, you have to separate or differentiate the body from yourself. The self is become a spectator, onlooker, and body become a kind of object to be seen as differently. So, in the very beginning, I may give some example. In the ordinary way, I put my hand here and the finger does not have any feeling. One of my finger does not have any pain or pleasure, or no feeling is in the finger, or my mind do not recognize or do not acknowledge any feeling of my finger. At the same time, can I be aware or sensitive to my finger? I can be aware my finger without combining it with any feeling. If you experiment it, it may be difficult, but it is possible. The purpose of making these two mindfulness separate is that in usual conditioning mind, the feeling, the recognition to the feeling has overwhelmed, and thereby we are completely unaware of the body apart from the feeling. The body becomes a ground of all kind of feeling, and when there is a feeling, you are aware, and there is no feeling, you are not aware. So in a subtle way, you try to practice to see the body, to aware the body, not giving attention to the feeling. The body might be in a kind of form or in a kind of solid entity or in a kind of structure. Of course, that form or that structure is the basis of all kind of feeling, but yet the mind can see that structure without touching to any kind of feeling which is going on to that structure. So these things need to be realized through experiential. It's very difficult to verbalize. A taste of honey or a taste of sugar, a taste of a sweet fruit, there are so many different ways, but if we ask someone to explain what is the difference between the sugar and the honey, the sweetness, how you can explain, there's no word to explain. Similarly, to differentiate the feeling and the body. You can experience it, but I have no vocabulary to explain it in a clear-cut term. Yes.
I'm interested in embodied ritual practices such as garcham, cham, ritual. I don't know if this is pertinent to other people. You can decide. But I'm interested in how the gross physical movements of cham or garcham interact with the subtle levels of mind as well as the subtle levels of body, such as the Tsa, Lung, and Tikle. Yes, is how this interaction happens and how the gross movements affect the subtle levels of body and mind. Thank you.
It's a quite different level of question. And an important question. In the practice of Paramitayana, the body does not have much importance in the spiritual journey. But it does not mean in Paramitayana body is completely neglected or it has no connection with the meditation or spiritual practice. In the Paramitayana also, all the teaching of meditation is begin from the posture, how you should sit, how your hands should be put, how your backbone should be straight, so on and so forth. Because mind is depend on body, and the moment of mind within and outside of the body are depend on the wind or the prana. Wind is English word, I don't know is correct or not. But the gross level, it's just breath or wind. At the subtle level, the force of movement. That movement has two different kinds. In the nature of wave or the nature of energy. Energy creates wave also. So that moment of prana or the moving force also need a channel. The channel is veins, the visible veins in which the blood is passing, or invisible veins in which only the energy is passing, and some other veins in which the essence of body, the thili, is passing. So all this has a very complex network throughout the body. And when you put the body in a specific posture, then the channels have become more open and straight, and they are not blocking with each other. So thereby the movement of breath become more easy, the movement of blood become more normal, and thereby your meditation can become more successful. So the dependency between mind and body, the interrelatedness, therefore in order to achieve a good stability of mind, you need certain particular posture of body, and in the Paramitayana that much is talked about. Because in Paramitayana the essence of body, the prana, the moving force, are not much used or employed for the upliftment of the spiritual journey. When you go to the Vajrayana in Tantric practice, the prana, the moving force, and the chakras of the nerve system, and the essence of the male female body hormones, all these are being used for eliminating the negative moment of the wind, and the wind shall have to be reduced and consolidate into the central part of the body, and for that you need all different kind of body exercise. So the Tantrayan practice, you will find hundreds of different exercise of the body, which enables you to make the channels, the various network of the ear channel, blood channel, thili channel, they have to be put in function, and for that physical exercise is very useful for them. And then coming to the cham, it has three different objectives. The preliminary objective is just as an offering to the deities, the chupel hamu, you may call it, and the different offerings are being carried by different female figures, and they are with good dance and good song or good music, they do offering. This is one way. And the second is to blessing the disciples or general public. The practitioner puts in garments or masks as one of the deity, and then with movement of body, as if the deity itself is doing something to bless or to give appearance, darshana, to the disciples. For that, the system of cham. Later on it became an entertainment. That is unfortunate. Actually it was not an entertainment, the second. And the third is the practitioner itself, himself or herself, to arouse or to break through blockages and other things. Then they have a very particular and very secret way of momenting, and each moment has related to inner chakras. There are 5 different chakras. Some of the tantras take 4, some of the tantras take 5, and the maximum is 6. And some of the Hindu traditions, they have 7th also, but 4 is the minimum. And each 4 different chakras can be stimulated and also empowered by the body movements. And that body movements shall have to be coincide with the chanting of the mantra. Chanting of mantra is a vocal thing, and the movement of the body is physical thing, and at the same time different meditation is the mental thing. The mind, body, speech together makes an action, and that is more powerful. It is, I am taking very gross thing, not in details. So this is largely, you can understand these 3 differences. Okay. Sir.
I would like to continue a little bit with the energy and the waves. They need to go inside channels. If these channels are blocked, is it not possible just to push and break through those blockages? Or would that be a very bad thing?
Sorry, I could not understand your question.
My question is the channels, the invisible channels for the energy and the waves.
Yes.
They have to travel somewhere.
Yeah.
Sometimes we run into blockages.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So apparently, with movement, you can move those blockages, but you can also just force your way through them.
Push away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you do push your way through, would that be considered as not very, what should we say, not so good?
I hope you are a little bit acquaintance with the tantric practice, Zorin. If that's so, in the beginning what we do is the 3 center winds. The center is completely blocked, and the 2 other winds are open. They are movements of wind and energy, and which has also the 4 chakras coming from these channels, and that also have some blockage. So the beginning of practitioner, first they visualize the chakras, and after visualizing the chakras, then the meditator himself visualize as a small round thing, and goes into the channels up and down to remove any kind of blockage or becoming hardening of the channels, or entangled with other channels. All these are to be removed by visualizing that small round light goes up and down in each. So it takes months together. So that is one thing. And the another thing is the Vajra Jap. Vajra Jap means breathing exercise. Breathing exercise, today the common breathing exercise are very few things, but apart from that, the Tantra practitioner in the Nalanda tradition, the Tibet tradition, there are hundreds of different ways of the breathing exercise. So breathing exercise is to send the wind in the particular channels which have a blockage, and by this way slowly the blockages have been opened. But since the chakras and all the channels in the ordinary way, they are enormous hindrances and blockages, and which cannot be removed forcefully, just push away. That is, in my view, not possible. But at the later stage, when only few hindrances are there, then there might be ways to clear them by force. You might have read the biography of Milarepa. Marpa have given a chit. He says, you don't open this unless when time comes. Then after number of years, Milarepa has something good food. His sister has given to him, and he has a good food after many years, and by taking that good food he regained his physical body, and then he realized there is some blockage somewhere, and then at that time he opened that paper which Mapa gave him, and in that there is a message, this kind of blockage, how you remove. In Tibetan language, Santhap. Santhap means by force, not gradually, immediately by force remove that blockage, something like that. And at the stage of Pondun, we call it, Pondun means you have reached considerable stage of your journey, then there is one or two obstacles that can be remedied, some kind of immediate method. Otherwise, the whole channels, the blockage cannot remove by force. It needs a great deal of practice, and that combines the body movement, wind movement, mind movement, posture, and particularly the breathing exercise. All this need to go together. I don't know whether I'm clear or not.
I will think about it.
If you are a practitioner, then of course you have to think. Otherwise, only for a general knowledge is not very important. Yes. Okay.
Thank you for your teachings. And
not teaching, talk. Bala, bala, bala.
This is great talk. Thank you.
Okay.
And firstly, I want to say sorry for my English. Sometimes I forgot some words. And
both of us are same. You need not.
I have 2 questions,
Yes.
and maybe it's better to ask it together.
Okay.
First question is about depending nature. As I understand, it's in each of these 4 meditation, we analyze the depending nature of form, Tsorwa, Sem, and then Che. And I know about 4 types of dependent nature. This is depending on parts, depending on cause, depending on mind, maybe, or something like this. Do we need analyze about depending on mind, and how need we do this one in applying of each of these 4 meditation? And the second question is about most difficult thing for me is this 2 nature. As you said, this is self nature and universe nature. Ransen and
Jitsen, yes.
Yes. Can you little bit explain little bit more explain about this these 2 things, and is it connected to 2 truths or no, or something like this? Thank you.
Very good question. The first question regarding the principle of interdependently arising. You have very rightly said that when we explain the interdependent arising, the nature of interdependent arising, the dependency is largely 2. Dependency between cause and effect, Jundil Chitindil, of course. Then the other is part and whole, that is Dashinduje Chitindil or Yala Tanyala Chitindil. So that is the how the things exist interdependently. Largely either the cause become cause because there is a effect, the effect become effect because there is a cause. So by this way, this kind of interdependency. And a body is conceived on its parts, and all the parts, when put together, the mind designated, then it becomes something, some livable thing. So these are the general explanation of interdependent arising. But apart from that, the whole phenomenon are related and interdependent in one or the other way. That is the pervasive nature of the explanation of the interdependent origination. The body, mind, feeling and dharma, they are not necessarily in the category of cause and effect, nor in the category of part and whole, but they have a certain connection. Body become body because of it is being owned by a consciousness. A consciousness is a consciousness because it has some subject to know. The feeling, it become a feeling because it connects to the body and the body connects to the mind. If body-mind does not have a connection, then the feeling does not exist. The existence of feeling is entirely dependent on the existence of body and also the existence of the consciousness. Without consciousness, the body can never feel anything. Body is the ground and feeling is something happening on that ground, and the feeling become feeling because of the consciousness recognize it, feels it. So this kind of interconnectedness is there. So therefore interconnected or interdependent arising finally goes to the mind or thought, which have put a designation to the thing. A pot, the name of the pot and the function of the pot is being designated by the thought. So therefore the cause, effect, part, partial and the mind, all this comes together. So it is very pervasive network depending each other, indispensably each other, depending nature that need to be seen. And otherwise also there are many things which are came into existence in relation to something. A big is a big because in relation with the small. If there is no small, then the idea of big cannot arise. And small is small in relation to something bigger. And that small is put in relation with it more smaller, then that small become big. And big and small does not exist by its own inherent nature. It become big or small in relation with something else. So in relation to something else, then which are designated or being considered by a mind, by the thought. These three comes together, then something can be recognized as this or that. So this is the interdependent nature. So therefore entire phenomenon has I think yesterday or day before yesterday I mentioned that a thing in Dharamshala or in thing something 1,000 kilometers away somewhere else, apparently there is no relation, but it has certain kind of dependency, and something happen here which can cause or which can do effect far away, which are not visible to us. So these things are very subtle and difficult to understand. Then regarding the self characteristics and the universal characteristics, this is very, very philosophical term. I cannot make it in a common language because the concept of Ransen and Chitsen, all the four Buddhist schools have different way of explaining. The Chitmata has largest explain about what is Ransen and what is Chitsen. And the Swatantiks and the Vivashiks and the Madhyamikas, they have their own way of explaining. And sometimes, mostly, how the thing can be recognized without recognizing something else, or a thing can be recognized necessarily through something else. So by this way, Ransen, Chitsen, but that is very technical thing. So what I was trying to make it understandable for lay person. The self characteristic is how the thing exists or do something by itself, and the universal characteristic is that self-existence, how it relates to the entire universe, a relationship. So this much is from where I can come down. So any self-recognizable something, particular thing, like this pot of this glass of water, it has at this moment a particular thing which I can hold, which I can pick up, which I can drink. All these particularities are there. But the water, the nature of water is so pervasive. The entire liquid of in this universe are nature of water, and this water has no different from the pervasive nature of the water, and it has something relationship. If the universe does not have a liquid substance, then a glass of water can never be exist. So it has a pervasive connectedness, linking. So the particularity is the self characteristic, Ransen, and the pervasiveness or its relation with pervasiveness, that is the universal characteristic. So this much I think we can talk about.
Five elements is Chitsen or no? Five elements, or can we say that the empty nature is Chitsen or no?
Empty nature is Chitsen, of course it is in Dumache. But five element, you have to say five element, you can put in both categories. The Ransen 5 elements or the Chitsen 5 elements. The 5 elements has its Ransen and 5 elements has also Chitsen. So that have to go together. Yes.
Rinpoche, will the practice of shamatha without object lead to the same result as shamatha with object?
I do not know any practice of shamatha without object. There are different ways of finding object. Shamatha means to practice stability or concentrativeness of the mind. For that, some object is almost indispensable. Of course, in the canon, the object of shamatha was 4 different categories, and they may not be outer object. The Mahamudra way of meditation, the mind itself is the object of the shamatha. And there also I can't say it is without object. The shamatha is practiced on the relative nature of the mind. You recognize the relative nature of the mind and then practice shamatha on that. That is the Mahamudra way of practicing shamatha. And of course it does not have a outer object. The mind itself is taking object of the shamatha practice. So if you have some information without object practice of shamatha, that will be a new information for me.
I mean, when we practice just to be aware of whatever arises in the mind. But is that your explanation of taking the relative mind as the object? This is in the Mahamudra context.
I think the tailoring course of Vipassana given by Acharya Goenka, in that they do not differentiate shamatha and Vipassana much clearly. The whole 10 days meditation, right from the Anapanasati, they are always trying to aware the body, the mind, the sensation. So it is not in the technical terms, it is not a practice of shamatha, it is a practice of the Vipassana. Practice Vipassana means practice of the analytical meditation. In that analytical meditation also you may say just aware, and just aware is just a word. When you are aware of something and nothing to be aware, then that kind of mind cannot be termed as aware. So actually when we go into the high category, then no duality. No duality means who do the aware or which can is aware. So this duality can be removed at the very highest level when you are in a samadhi. Otherwise in the beginning level, aware means something there is which is to be aware. So this is my knowledge. There may be something else, of course. The Buddhism is so vast, so I can't claim that I know everything.
Hi Rinpoche, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
This is a little off topic. Given your accomplishments within and without, and your close relationship with His Holiness for decades, 50 years probably, 60 years, I was wondering if you can expound a little bit on His Holiness the Dalai Lama's good qualities. Given that I'm not so sensitive, I can't see these, but given from your perspective and your relationship with him, I was wondering if you can expound just for a little while some of his good qualities. Thank you.
This is very difficult question. And I have no capacity to articulate the special qualities of the present His Holiness. And it is also not very correct to mention that I am very closely associated with His Holiness. I used to read in the Vinaya Pitaka. In Vinaya Pitaka there is a sentence saying that the Buddha can never become intimate to anyone. Some may live together with Buddha for decades and years, but a kind of intimacy or closeness or free from any kind of hesitation or fear is not a good word, hesitation or some kind of a very close friend can open everything, but Buddha was not like. Even Ananda, Sariputra, they have to summon together their courage and strength whenever they need to ask some question to the Buddha. So the present Dharma is also like that. I have the greatest opportunity to work under his leadership for more than 50 years. And the first amazement which I experienced was 1954. His Holiness was very young at that time, and I have no one-to-one audience or contact. I have attended a long teaching with His Holiness junior teacher, Tibet Fund in Gomantasang. And at the end of his teaching, he talked about the 14th Dalai Lama. Of course, at that time, the common people does not know much of His Holiness, because apart from regular Molam festival teachings, he was not started huge teachings by that time. And Tibet Fund have said that if the fortune of the Tibetan people could hold it, the 14th Dalai Lama, the present Dalai Lama, will become a kind of combination of the first, fifth and seventh together. Until the 13th, the first, the direct disciple of the Tsongkhapa, and the great the fifth, and the great the seventh. All these three are outstanding scholars and practitioners. And the first have 13 volumes of his work, and the fifth has more than 40 volumes, including his writings and Tirmas altogether. And the seventh has 8 volumes of outstanding. So these three are academically and teaching, and so we are very amazed how such can be a combination of all these great three together, which is beyond our comprehension. Then he began to give teaching, culture initiation, and then he gives a teaching so wonderfully, and then we understand what Jabsharmji means. And still there's little doubt in our mind, since he is not in the monastery. In the debate, he may not be so excellent as of the people who are able to debate in the monastery. Then 1958, he gave the Laramba examination, and then he participated in the debate, first in the Demo monastery. And the abbots who were participating directly debate with him were little hesitant how they should do, and they should be so directly and aggressively, or they should be little polite. Then Jabjishar Rinpoche and Jabjiling Rinpoche, both our tutors, have summoned all those abbots, and they say you should do as usually you are doing in your monastic debate. Then the next day the debate took place, and then we understood he was outstanding in the debate capacity as well. 3 or 4 abbots could not continue their debate. They are facing so difficult. Then after coming to India, His Holiness gave very extensive teachings, not only empowerments or some kind of usual teaching. He gave commentaries on Tsongkhapa's Tangeli Shenyebu, which is considered to be one of the toughest treatises, and such teaching, and also the Indian commentaries. So by this way he has established unconceivable wisdom and scholarship, academic scholarship as well as the experiential scholarship. Then his temporal thing, he is by nature very democratic, and he never impose his decisions to anyone, and he take everybody's opinion, advice, and discuss them thoroughly, and he respects everybody's view, and by nature he is really a democratic person. When he takes a decision, at many times it appears to us this decision may not be the best one, but after some time necessarily we realize, yes, this was the right decision, and there's no doubt about it. So this kind of realization comes at many times, even small things or big things, whatsoever. At many times we differ Of course, now we have to accept it since His Holiness has decided. Otherwise, this may be not the best choice of it. So I have so many instances and happenings like that. So his long-term vision and his understanding of the common people's aspirations and attitude, and for that how the Buddha's teaching without any distortion to make suitable to the present generations or present people's, suitable to the present people's mind. That is, I think, his greatest contribution to the Buddhism. And at this moment, I consider his greatest contribution to the entire humanity is the teaching of universal responsibility and teaching of kinship among the religious traditions, and the teaching of secular ethics, and now the teaching of compassionate revolution, which is now become quite popular among the Western youth people. And he said, in this world, many revolutions happened from time to time, and that helped humanity in many ways, but unfortunately all those past revolutions are based on anger and greed or hatredness. Now the world must have a final revolution in the 21st century, a revolution based on love and compassion, free from all violence. Because the humanity is now passing through a great crisis, visibly or invisibly. So all these crises can only be encountered by love, compassion and non-violence. There is no any other alternative. So this is, I think, his greatest contribution to the world. And apart from that, one thing, his engagement, dialogue with modern science people. Very clear results are not yet to be appear, because these are still preliminary, but there are many indications that it will have a very large effect. So I think after 50 years, the entire scientific knowledge might take some different direction due to the engagement of His Holiness, the Buddhist science and modern science. Okay.
I'm sorry, we don't have much time, so we're going to wrap it up. On behalf of Lha Charitable Trust and everybody present here, and also those who are watching the live video, I would like to express our sincere gratitude for Rinpoche for the past 4 days lecture. May I please request our director to offer a khadak to Rinpoche from all of us. Thank you so much, Rinpoche. Thank you. Kuchana.